Welcome, Majda Ficko. You're coming to us from Winnipeg, and we're so happy that you've taken the time to share your story, both with Dimitre, but also how it's changed the direction of your career. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to hearing about Dimitre, your story with him, and his legacy.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and you know what, anything I can do to support the CdLS Foundation and the parents and the children that are involved. And you know what, if my story or something can show some kind of support, or people can glean like any information they can, I'm happy to help out.
I would love for you to share us your story with Dimitre, and from your pregnancy to his early child years, the eventual passing of Dimitre a few years ago, which must have been extremely difficult. And I know that there's many families that would love to hear your story and where you're at now within your process through grief.
Oh, okay. Well, it's been a journey, and I got sorry, I got my favorite cat here. She can't leave my side. Anyways, my story starts like I'm a hairstylist by trade. So I had businesses, and I own children's hairstyling salons. I was actually the first one in Canada to open up specialty children's salons just for cutting kids' hair. And actually, I was starting to thinking of franchising them, and it was actually at that time I met my husband, and I was actually getting a little bit older, and I thought, okay, I should start a family, because career pushes everything back for me. So I mean, here I wanted to really interject very quickly. It's got nothing to do having a child with CdLS. It has nothing to do with age. I know many women who have had children with the syndrome in their 20s, 30s. I was actually I was almost 40 when I had Dimitre. So, but I pushed my career off. I knew I was healthy. My mom, like, we have great genetics. So that's why I was not concerned getting pregnant at a later date. So basically, I got pregnant fairly quickly after we got married, only because of my age. And yeah, you know what? I was very small, and my doctor kept sending me to the specialist to have scanned. She says, "You're kind of small." So I went to get it scanned, and I was getting scanned monthly, sent monthly. And my doctor kept sending me, and they kept, "Oh, you know what? He's just, you know what? He's just small." They could tell the sex of the baby. He's just small. He's fine. And of course, back then, Dimitre was born in 1997. So, but back then, like in 1996, they didn't have genetic markers for Cornelia de Lange. So they had none. They had no idea. So what was happening was, as they were scanning me, they were writing down on their notes, severe IUGR. And they weren't telling me. Those two male doctors were not telling me that they were writing down severe instead of sharing what they were finding. They just told me, "Oh, he's just fine. He's just small." Obviously, that was not the case. So they knew something was wrong, but in their case, later on, of course, because we pulled them in and the hospital, because we said, "Look, you guys are writing notes about me. You didn't share. You didn't say to us, you know what? There's a possibility there might be some genetically wrong. There's something." They weren't full front with us, I guess, because they thought we couldn't handle it, and they said, "Well, what if we were wrong?" And I said, "But you were writing down on your notes. You should have shared it with me and my husband, what you're concerned, or anything that come up, because you know what? It's me. It's my body. It's my child, and you've got notes, and you should be sharing this with me." So instead, they kept it off, and we only found out after, when Dimitre was born, that like what went wrong, like what's going on, because Dimitre was we didn't go the full term. I think he was about 6 weeks early, and basically, as I was my last scan, they found that I had like 10 cc's of fluid left. And they said, well, another 24 hours, he would have been gone. Had I not come in and have the scan. So basically the body was shutting down because the pregnancy was not so-called normal. So the fact that Dimitre was saved is because of the last scan, and they said they immediately put me emergency cesarean. So I didn't have enough fluid to do the small little cesarean where they had to cut me like from the navel all the way down, just so to open it, because they couldn't. He was so small. He was like I think he was at 2.8 pounds, and I had no fluid. So when they cut me open, because I asked to stay awake because I wanted to watch. so so as they cut me open and they were digging in, they kept on digging, and they finally pulled him out with 2 fingers. And he looked he looked like a little shrimp with dark hair. Like that's how small he was. And that's how they picked him up, like this. And then because they had me open so long on the table, I went into hypothermic shock. So all of a sudden, I started crashing on the table, and my husband's, they told my husband, get him out of the room, get out of the room. And then I just felt this thing come on top of my face, because I was shaking because I was going to fall off the table, because they had me open for far too long trying to get him out. And then they just knocked me out, and then they started quickly suturing me. And then a couple hours later, and just so you know, going through all this, I was expecting a normal baby, like nothing, whatever, because these guys, I call them doctors, they were telling me, oh, he's just fine, he's just small. So I was not expecting or knowing anything. And like I say, back then they didn't have any markers for CdL. They tested him for everything. So because he was small, he says, well, he doesn't have a Down syndrome. There's so many other syndromes he could have had, but they didn't have the marker for Cornelia at that time.
Yeah.
So that's fine. So the thing is that, see, here's the problem with women. We understand our own bodies, and most of us are in tune with, and no matter what information we get, if we get the information, we can disseminate and we can absorb it and we can handle it how we should and what's good for us. The worst thing to do is, I find, in the medical community, is they withhold the information. And then you get slapped upside the back of your head and like, oh, you're in shock. Like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
So,
well, it breaches trust in terms of every single healthcare interaction you have later on. You're wondering, are they telling me the truth? Are they telling me everything? And I mean, in the world of, as there's been, like, especially in Canada, there's been an attempt to shift to patient family-centered care, which is nothing about me without me.
It's so different now from when Dimitre was born. So I just want to assure everybody who's listening that it's not the same as it was in the old, so-called old days.
Yeah.
But this is just my story and the stuff that I went through. And I guarantee you, if it happened to me, it happened to many other women.
Yeah.
Well, because we, like I said, I didn't know anything was wrong. Not at all. As he was being pulled out, I thought, okay, he's small. And I just didn't think. And of course I got knocked out. And then when I came to, a couple hours later, I was in the recovery room. And then all I heard was this one person I've never seen before come to me and said, I think there's something genetically wrong with your son. I'm thinking, okay, what? I don't know, like, you get through all kinds of visions, and I didn't think, no big deal. And then when they wheeled him in, he was like so small, and he had this tube taped to his little head, and it's like he didn't look like human being. Like, it's so small, looked like a small tiny shrimp, but they had him so taped up for tubes and all kinds of stuff connected, like. It was like, and I was groggy, and I just see my son there, and then you're so exhausted, and it's very emotional. And then later on, and another doctor came and said, we don't know what's wrong. We have to wait. The geneticists are on. It's the weekend. They won't get back, so they don't know what's wrong. They don't know what's wrong with your child. So I'm thinking, oh geez, and of course. It's very emotional. We waited in the hospital for 3 days, and the geneticists came back eventually, and they said, we believe it could be this, and we just have to do more tests. And back then, like I say, they can pretty much find out. Back then, it took a little longer. Now they can just do all kinds of tests, and boom, you'll know right away. And then, of course, I had to learn what is Cornelia de Lange. Like when I got that prognosis, your child's got Cornelia de Lange. Okay, so and so I don't understand. So I had to learn. I went online. I learned. Because there's no connection. I think there was, when I was looking into it, there was only 3 of us in Manitoba who had children with Cornelia de Lange, and the foundation, I think, I was given the information to go to the Cornelia de Lange Foundation in the U.S.
Yeah.
So, and that was all the information that I got. And basically, though, I got to put the part of the story is, and I had almost all the doctors come to me and tell me, stay in the hospital. He's not going to come home, because yeah. So, and I did. So I stayed in the hospital, and it's so hard. I was so afraid to get too like you couldn't even hold them, and they had to wrap them in so many just for me to hold, and then you can't feel them, like you can't get that emotional connection. And I kept thinking, I try not to get too connected because he's going to die. So basically, that's what they're telling me, is like, here's your baby. And then on one hand, you have the nurses writing down, well, she's not connecting and she's not wanting to hold him. And then the other one saying, well, you know what, don't expect your child to come home. So as a mom, I get, what you're so emotionally invested, and then you got, well, this baby's not going to come home with you. So how do you try to get overly connected or get emotionally detached when you know that the child's not going to come home with you? And that, to me, it's so conflicting in the hospitals, in the medical situation. I think back to it and I get so angry sometimes. I mean, now as I'm getting older and I can get more vocal and whatever, I can just imagine the pressure, like a 20 and 30-year-old who's hasn't been in those situations, who don't know how to, those circumstances. You want to remain calm and absorb information, but when you got polarizing information, or just people or the medical professional, it's like, come on, it's like it's tough. So right now I understand, like, I can look back as 50-50 hindsight, but you know what, just so I stayed in the hospital with Dimitre for 2 weeks. And he was so small, there was nobody coming. I had to stay there because the nurses were so busy. They kicked him out of the NICU because they said, we're sorry, he has no, we're not expecting him to survive, so he can't take a bed in the NICU. So we were pushed up to Ward 3, which is normal child, where all those kids are. And he's like 2.8 pounds. And they put him in a regular bed, and they had to adjust a pillow just to angle him because he had his fundiplication. He had no, the tube was gone, right? So usually the top of the tube, what's that called? Where it closes off the top of the stomach. So when you put food in, it stays down. Well, he didn't have one. So everything we put in came back up. So they had to put him at a 45-degree angle. They couldn't do surgery. Like I said, we discussed it later. We had to wait till he was 3 years old enough and big enough for them to do the surgery. Through the whole time, I had to keep him at a 45-degree angle. It could never lie flat down, because everything that was in his stomach would come right back up. And then I'd have to suction in the middle of the night so it didn't aspirate. Oh, it was just fun times. Anyway, so because I have to remember back all the stuff I went through. You don't think of all the stuff you have to do and all the stuff you go through. You do whatever it takes. You do whatever it takes. I'm not saying everybody. Some people, and I know that and I don't fault them for it, it's too much on them. And I know this one woman who I connected with her in the hospital. And the funny thing is, her child was born almost the same time, but she was from single parent. She had other children in the family. She was lower income, and it was harder for her to take care and focus on her one child with the disabilities. So she gave it to a foster family, which was probably the best thing she could have done. And she was thinking for her child. So, kudos to her. I mean, I couldn't imagine it, but if I was in her situation, I probably would have had to. Anyways,
Yeah.
food, everybody's has a different situation because it's not easy. And it depending on the severity of the like mental and physical, it depends on the severity of it. Some are physically not affected so much, but mentally are, or vice versa, or not just mild and mild. Because most of the ones I see now, it's more on the medium to mild side for both mentally and physically. Whereas Dimitre, he's severely mentally and physically disabled. I mean, he couldn't walk, he couldn't talk, he couldn't eat by mouth. He's my forever baby. When in the first year of his life, I was weighing him on a letter weigher, So that's what I was feeding him. I kept him at a 45-degree angle. I was putting tubes through his nose into his stomach every day just to feed him. So I had to get good at that, good and fast, right? So being in the hospital for 2 weeks, they told me he's going to pass away. He's going to pass away. So I'm like, okay, after being there for 2 weeks, because the nurses couldn't be brought by him and take care of him all the time. So I was there for 2 weeks in the hospital, sleeping beside him, eating beside him, being beside him the whole time, because I thought he was going to pass away. Then after 2 weeks, I said, you know what? I'm going to take him home. Show me if he's going to pass away, I don't want to be here. I want to take him home. He can pass away at home with me. So I said, show me what I need to do. Show me they taught me how to put the hose down. They taught me all kinds of stuff. And so, okay, so this is what I need to do to keep him alive. Fine. So I took him home. And I did whatever it took to keep him alive. And I pushed the thing in the back of my mind that stuff can happen. In fact, it was 5 months in and something was happening. He was beside me. And all of a sudden, he started turning blue and he flopped over, and he was like at 5 months, 5 months old. He was like a couple pounds. So I thought, you know what you do? You reach out, and I grabbed the kid and I started performing CPR on him. And don't you dare! I spent all this time and energy. You're not dying on me. So he was on the pillow, and I grabbed him and like pushing on his chest and breathing into his face. And oh no, you're coming back. So throughout Dimitri's life, he did go into like shutdown or cardiac arrest 3 times. So the first time was he's 5 months. The second time, I think he was around 10 years old. And the third time, which is amazing, was he was 16 years old. And my daughter, who was 15 years old, I was downstairs in my office and he went into arrest and all of a sudden he's turning blue and my daughter's screaming. So I'm trying to get up and she's on top and she's giving him chest compressions and breathing into his face. She was 15 years old and she got her brother back to breathing again. I mean, how crazy is that? And by the time I got up and he was starting to come to. So, I mean, you know what? I would say he's a blessing because you know what? It also, if you have other children or if you have teachers or other kids, or because Dimitre went to school eventually, and it develops empathy. It develops so much more. My children they understand, like, it's not just all about them. If you got another life, you got someone to take care of, and someone's more dependent, and I think it brings out in other people, like I say, empathy and understanding and consideration. Good qualities. You know what? It doesn't bring anything negative. So the only thing is, like I say, the only thing that I could see that would be kind of a strain is if you have to be with the child all the time, or if hopefully you've got a partner that can help you that way, or you got enough support or finances. That's the only thing. Other than that, it's not a big deal. Like, these children are fabulous. I mean, Dimitre was never he never lashed out. He was never angry. He was always he was either, he had 2 things. He was either in pain because of his digestion and whatever, or he was happy. So, it was between the two, but he didn't have that mindset thankfully, he didn't have that mindset where he was angry, he was lashing out, or he's taking it out on himself, or he was like violent or angry. I'm so thankful that was the case. But again, I had to give what I gave up for that, for the trade-off, I think, was because he was so mentally impaired as well. So he was mentally and physically disabled. So he couldn't run away from me. So if he did something bad, he's not like a normal kid. You run away or talk back or anything. So I said, Dimitri's my children always say, you always favored Dimitre. I said, well, he doesn't talk back to me. He's a good kid. There's nothing wrong here. Look, you know what? So they were comparing before that I favored Dimitre or he was my favorite or whatever. I says, look, he's not my favorite, but guess what? He doesn't talk back. He doesn't run away. He does, you know what? He's the perfect child. But of course, he's the forever baby, that's what I considered him. He's my forever baby.
Yeah.
So,
how, in terms of when he was 5 months old and you ended up resuscitating him, what did they find out in terms of, did he end up having some kind of cardiovascular issue or?
Nothing. I didn't take him into a hospital. He was at home. I just told the doctor she's okay.
Okay.
But see,
they must have at one point done some kind of scan on his heart, though.
Oh yes, his heart was defective. He has a defective. Yeah. Oh no, when they first gave him, he had only one kidney. He had a defective heart, and there's a few other things. But like I said, I don't care. They told me he's not going to live when he came home. Like, don't even bother. So I was already warning him, or already putting in my head to expect my child's going to be passing away. And that's my whole mindset for the first few years of his life.
Yeah.
That's what you have to prepare yourself. You have to think about those things because you, like a mom, you don't want surprises. You want to be prepared. Like if he hopefully he lived, but you know what? It's because this and this and this happens. We take care of stuff. We have to. We have to get it, compartmentalized and say, okay, if this happens, I have to do this. So I was prepared for all the scenarios. And of course, it's terrible to say, but you know what? If you've got a child and they tell you your child's going to die, you're going to believe them. I mean, did he pass away 3 times? Yeah. But, he got back, I could have left him. I could have let him pass away and not resuscitate him. If I was downstairs and my daughter wasn't there, he could have passed away. So he had many opportunities to pass away. So he wasn't ready. Someone wasn't ready to take him. So, I mean, it's all good. We do what we do. But
did you know CPR? Did you and your...
No, hell no, I just watch TV stuff.
Okay, there you go. As long as you're doing compressions. I mean, now you don't even do the
basic compressions. Well, you see TV and you see the swimming instructors, you see all whatever, and could chest compression, then you breathe, you could chest and you breathe. So I mean, So no, I mean the fact that what was it? I think there was a couple. The first 3 years of his life, we were in and out of hospital. I was so sick and tired of it. We were always in and out of hospitals for something was going wrong. It's mostly gastrointestinal, all kinds of stuff here. And of course, aspiration. Like there were so many. And the first 3 years of his life, like I said, I spent so much time in the hospital. I remember because I have the salon, like as a hairdresser, I own children's salons, and I was going to franchise those across Canada. Well, of course, Dimitre is a stopping. Like, you know what? Another door opens, you have to go through that one. So it's like, so I still had staff. I still have from my 2 other stores. So here I am in the hospital writing off paychecks. I'm doing my book work in the hospital. That's what I'm doing. So you juggle, you do whatever you have to. And my mom was cooking, and as my husband finished work, he would pick up the food that my mom cooked so he could bring it to me so I could eat in the hospital. That was our life.
It's amazing when I'm just listening to your story, and I certainly can relate to many of those, especially the early years when you really just want them to survive. All you have to add in is, like you said, either a challenging family situation, you don't have community or family support, you're struggling with finances, you're struggling with your own mental health issues or your other health issues in terms of
Yeah.
you might have a chronic illness, that is a really tough combination to get through.
Even if uh, it's sad to say, but sometimes some children with special needs, the marriage tears apart. Sometimes it brings them together, but
Yeah.
sometimes it tears them apart. And
Yeah.
then you're a mom with a single income, single support, single everything.
Yeah.
So then your finances could go down too. So you can either be starting there or you can be put in that situation.
Yeah.
So that's another thing that women, I really believe people, especially women with special needs children, really have to look into securing financial support, whether they're still married or not, financial support in case something happens. So whether they are with the child or if they're gone, if something happens to them, they should always that. And I think that's overlooked. I really think that's overlooked. They do not look in.
Yeah.
Okay, what if my husband and we separate? How am I going to be able to support monetarily? Because if you can't work or you got to take care of your child, who's going to watch your child? Or you got daycare, you're going to stay home, because it's a whole new realm. It's not like, okay, well, they're going to get to be an adult, they're going to be on, and then I can, do this stuff or whatever. This is Cornelia de Lange or these special needs children. They all need support all the time. So it's either you or somebody else that you're paying.
Yeah, I think that's a good point in terms of, you get dumped the diagnosis, but there's no support. And then we had one of our first geneticists when Emmy got the diagnosis at 3 months said, "Oh, just to let you know, 75% of special needs parents get a divorce." I'm like, okay. And there is no counseling, there's no support in terms of the stress that ends up in that family. And we certainly have many families that reach out to us who are marital conflict in terms of that stressful situation. Both individuals are grieving the loss of a healthy child,
Yeah.
and people grieve differently. Marriage in itself is difficult without any kind of other challenges, and there just isn't support. So,
No.
in terms of even, we've had some families where they've tried to seek support, and there really isn't the experience. They feel like they're not being understood by a counselor, or if they're complex medical issues, have the trauma of an ICU visit, are dealing with how is their life going to look. Both people are reevaluating their careers, there's financial stress, there's all kinds of, nobody's sleeping, you're dealing with potentially having to resuscitate your child at home, and you have a therapist who says your problems are too big for me. In terms of, those are the experiences families are sharing. And and unless you have good insurance through your employer or you privately paying for it, there's not a lot. And when we have a lot of our families in small communities where there's not even anybody there. So you're either going to, if you have a religion, you're hoping that there's some pastor that has some capability just to even listen, but there's no real therapy options. Some of the bigger cities, we've been able to find some experts for families who are struggling with their marriage, or just the stress in the family for siblings and others, that have specific expertise with what it's like to have a medically fragile child, and or the complexities that come with it, where somebody has to, it's complicated, and it's unfortunate there isn't more support early on. And that's just the psychosocial element, then alone the financial component. I mean,
and that's where a foundation like yours is. It helps people. You can guide them and show them, okay, you might look at this option, so someone could give some answers or some guidance or some direction, so they're not lost.
And creating a sense of community, where sometimes, I mean, it's a lonely road to begin with, and finding, whether it's through a foundation like this, but as long as people have some sort of support in their community.
Seriously, like I say, I look back and I'm thinking, holy crap, if I had to do it again, it's just my thought process, could I? Because it's automatic. It's your automatic pilot. You don't even think about it. I look back and like, holy crap, did I really do that? Did I get up every 2 hours? Okay, so to further, I'll just move the story along.
Yeah.
So Dimitre, because he was not mobile, and um, he couldn't walk for sure. So the thing is that he was fed by G tube, and was more convenient because he was so small, and we had to do it the feeds overnight. So the problem is, you're eating, you're peeing and pooing. So I had to get up every 2 hours to change those diapers because they're full of pee, they're full of poo, or just a little bit touches his skin. And I tried all kinds of cream, I tried everything. But as soon as it touched his skin, it was so sensitive. He had blisters and bleeding, and the kid was always in pain and crying. So what am I going to do? Right? I was buying everything that promised a cure, everything that promised any kind of, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. My kid is now surviving, but he's 3 years old and he's constantly in pain and has horrific diaper rash all the time. So I'm thinking, oh. So during having my stores, I'm more fortunate because I had access. I was actually working. There was a retired chemistry professor from the U of M. I contacted her because I wanted to make shampoos and conditioners for kids. So I could, when I start franchising, I could sell them, And then actually my husband said, why don't you ask Elaine if she can make like something for Dimitre? And I'm thinking, hell yeah. So I called her back and I said, forget the shampoos and conditioners. Can you help me make something for my son? She goes, yeah, what do you need? So she says, she says, well, tell me what I need to put in and I'll make it for you. So I talked to doctors, pharmacists. Actually, the best one was a burn unit specialist. And he said, he told me, he says, a diaper rash. It's not a rash. He said, it's a chemical burn. And he says, yeah. So I thought, okay. So I said, what do you do? He says, well, we have burn patients come in. We not only sometimes inject them with zinc, but we put zinc plaster bandages on them, like high in zinc. So he says, whatever you make sure it's high in zinc. So I went back to her and I said, okay, zinc number one. And then of course you've got to put like a spreadable thing that also keeps the moisture either in or out. Like you got to have like a barrier. So like some form of Vaseline. Lanolin is closest to our own DNA. So I put some of that to keep the thing soft. And then okay, as the skin is healing, you've got to use cornstarch. It's an anti-itch. So that's all 4 ingredients. That's it. That's all that we put. And we mix it around. And Dimitre, of course, was a test subject. It took off and on, I'd say about 1.5 years. And then I come up with this cream for him. And I put it around his G-tube. He used to get horrific cold sores on his ears, on his mouth. Like, I don't know. He got cold sores. I guess susceptible to some. I couldn't take him out in the sun. There would be weird things happening to him. So I couldn't even take him out in the sun. But the diaper rashes, he was getting horrific diaper, and I felt so like, what do I do? The kid he comes out of, being in stress all these years, and then all of a sudden now that's alleviated. I kind of figured that out. He's a little bit bigger, keeping a 45-degree angle. I feed him properly. I do whatever. But now he's getting these horrific diaper rashes. Before it was different, right? But now he's G-tube feeding, and of course he's peeing and pooing and it's touching his skin. So I tried everything in the market, and then when I finally got this cream I was using on him, I was using it on this because it's a natural, and you can put it on any skin condition. So everywhere I put it on it. So as I was doing that, I had a care home. I hired part-time to come in and help. So I had my other 2 kids were younger and for school or whatever. So I had her, and she was a nurse, ex-nurse. And she said, I have some nurse friends. I says, in the States, can I send some stuff down to her? And then they started talking, and then they said, why don't you sell the stuff? And I said, look, I just made it for Dimitre. Whatever. And then actually it was another one of Dimitre's doctors. And I was sitting a skeletal and I remember him sitting in between my legs, Dimitre and the doctor, and I was talking about my cream, and he says, "Why don't you sell it?" And I said, "Look, I just made for Dimitri. It's." So you know what he did? We were sitting in his waiting room, and he opens the door and he says, "What do you see out there?" And of course, all children with all kinds of maladies and deformities and whatever, because can't, Dr. I think it was Dr. McPherson, and so many. It was so connected to so many doctors. I have to keep my mind straight with all of them. And so he opens the door and he says, "What do you see out there?" And I says, "Like the kids and the parents." And he says, he looks at me. He says, "Why should your child be the only one to benefit? Sell the brain." That's what he said to me.
Yeah, you can't get away with that one.
Honestly, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even think about how relieved I felt after I made it for Dimitre. And I put the cream on once at night, like a nice layer, and I hook him up with the tube. And he's peeing and pooing throughout the whole night. In the morning, of course, he's laying down and he's finished, and I peel off the diaper. I don't want to sound disgusting, but if he could stand, his diaper would drop to the floor. That's how big and heavy. It's always full of poop and pee. Yeah. So when I open it and to pull it off to clean him, handfuls of pee and poo on one side, where his bum is, nothing. You still got that thin white film still protecting his butt. So I thought, winner. You know what? This stuff is freaking amazing. It's saved. I was so relieved. I was so thankful that I had something, that he's no longer in pain, that he's no blister, bleeding. He's not crying. I'm not going out of my head trying to buy every freaking thing on the market, hoping it helps him. Yeah. So even the doctors, and so I said, well, you know what? This stuff is amazing. So I said, okay, I'm convinced we're gonna start selling it. So what I did is I put it in little round jars, and I started handing it out to all the pediatricians, where Dimitri is. There's about 20, a group of 20 on a floor, and of course they all know because they all share information. And I was there all the time anyway. For his doctor, Dr. Janet Gabrowski, I got a shout out to her. She's amazing. She's been with us from day one, and she didn't even tell us not to come see her even after the age of 10, 12 or 13. You got all the babies, and of course she says, "Oh, just bring them in," because usually they have to stop and you have to get transitioned to another doctor. But she kept them as long as she could. And she was such a big supporter. She saw how it helped him. And then she was talking to the other doctors. I started sharing samples, and she said, "Yeah, you know what?" She wrote me a letter, actually endorsing Baby Butts. You'll never find that. People say, "How did you get that?" You'll never get a doctor, never, endorsing it. It's on her sheet. It's on all her letterhead. It's from all her credentials, and it just mentions Baby Butts cream, that she's backing it. People can lose the credibility if it doesn't pull through. You know what I mean? Yeah. But she saw the results, and she saw Dimitri year after year after year. And I said, "I'm going to start selling it. I'm going to, would you be able to?" She goes, "Yeah, I would. I'll do that for you because I can see the results. I'll do it for you." I'm like, and then I showed other doctors, and they said, "How did you get that?" Because if a doctor does stuff like that, it's not, she didn't make it. He says, "It's not like she made it." Does she have a stake in your company? No. She doesn't have nothing in the company. Yeah. She just did it because she saw the results with Dimitri, and she was a good person. And she says, "You know what? That you should be sharing this stuff to help other babies." So she wrote that letter, and it's like gold. It's like gold. Like, you'll never find that. Of course, I have doctors writing a couple sentences or whatever, and here I endorse this product. The stuff is great, whatever. Yeah. She actually wrote a letterhead. Like, you'll never find it. And I was so grateful that happened. So I put these pods. I gave it to other doctors, and then I went. How I started my company is I took. There was a Shoppers Drug Mart right beside the pediatrician office, the clinic. And I said, I went to that Shoppers Drug Mart, and I had the full-size 4-ounce jars. And I said, the pediatricians are handing out samples of this product. The customers or patients are going to need to know where they can get it. Can I put some on your shelf? And they said, yes. So I put some on the shelf. Then I went across the street to Safeway. Oh, the Shoppers Drug Mart over there is handling this, and this is what the pediatricians are doing. Can I put some on your shelf? Yes. That's
There you
what I
go.
did. And that's how I did. I
Grassroots.
geared up store by store by store, and then I hit the more national. So now we're across Canada, and Shoppers Drug Mart, Loblaws, Rex. Like we're not 100% of them, but a lot of the
Yeah.
stores, and we're gaining a lot of credibility. So it's like, but this was all came because of Dimitre. So I actually, he was I made it for him, but the fact that I made it for him, it actually is helping so many other babies and kids out there, and that's his legacy. I mean, and now we'll pass up to his legacy. Well, Dimitre was almost 20. He was 23 at the time, and he was actually 1 month short of his 24th birthday. And for the year previous, it was COVID, right? The 2020, it was COVID. So I made sure, like, we didn't hardly do anything. Nobody, like, to protect him, because I knew something like that he would catch it fairly quickly. So the kids were careful. We were careful. So he would not get sick, because he was at home all the time. Like, I would not, I let him out of my sight. Anyways, so it was 2021 when he did pass away. And people always said, did he die from COVID or symptoms of COVID? And he was not. Everybody was the doctors were connected, the funeral home, and like we were all connected because everything was put in place for a long time anyway. So the thing is that I didn't want an autopsy done. I don't care. So the thing is that he was sick, but I thought he was just getting another cold. So I just propped up at a 45-degree angle to keep them warm, kept them whatever. But it seemed a little different than a cold. So he had other symptoms. His eyes were getting more red. And I knew the last phase was really kind of scary for me. And I thought, okay, something is really going wrong. After I gave him a bath, I saw a trickle of blood come out of his ear.
Yeah.
Okay, this is more than a cold. Something's not right.
Mm-hmm.
So I talked to the doctor, and he said, well, I talked to his doctor, and he said, if things progress and if he gets better, great. But if things progress and he doesn't, he says, you can, if you want to, bring him into the hospital. But he says, I'm telling you right now, they're just going to keep him in a bed. And it's just around the COVID, they might even restrict you for a visit or whatever. So that's number 2. He says, but also, he says, they'll get him, and you're not going to guarantee he's going to pass away with you or without you. And they will, because he's in a hospital, they will do an autopsy. And I said, okay. All right, same thing, same deal. When he was born, same thing. He's coming home. If he's going to die, he's going to stay home. And that's what happened. The night after he passed away. So
okay,
I did know. Like we hooked him up to his feed, and he was still moving around. He's a little uncomfortable because it was cold. Lift him up a little bit at an angle. We all went to bed. Everything was fine. In the morning, my daughter went to go check on him and said, Mom, something's wrong with Dimitre. Of course, he was still, he was, we shouldn't, I don't know if you want to talk about this, but he was rigor mortis was starting to set in. So he was starting to stiffen up, and he was starting to feel cold. So he was not completely in the full throes of it. So he probably passed away a couple hours before, and the dying state, like the death stage and the dying stage. So like we just stayed with him. So we stayed with him almost like for a good half a day, like I did. And he's in his bed, and I cleaned him and changed him, talked to him, So try to make it as normal as possible.
In terms of him being able to pass at home, and for all of you to have that time, that's pretty special. as
It
difficult
is.
as that
It
is.
is. You know what? If they can, and if they can handle it, like if the hospital can, you've taken them and they can help him, different story. But I knew that they wouldn't be able to. They would just hold him and do whatever and do their tests, and it's useless. And what it's like, and they're not going to bring him back. He had a DNR on his chart from, I don't, because they said he had no quality of life, so they're not going to do life sustaining measures to bring him back. So it's either they do chest compressions and breathing, but nothing life. And I get that, and I'm okay with that. I understood and I agreed to that, because if he wants to pass away, he will pass away. He will do it on his own time.
Mhm.
Who am I to jump in and pull him back? I mean, I did it because it was selfish of me. I wanted him back when he was like 5 months old. Like I grabbed him. I was doing what don't because I figured I was in it. Like I did everything to keep him with me, to keep him alive, to do whatever. I mean, you're not checking out. No, you're staying with me. So I wasn't ready. So, but I thought, you know what? I don't know if he was suffering or it was just his time. And just the fact, and the doctors even tell me, just the fact that he was almost 24 years old, they gave him nothing. They gave him a few days, not even a few days to live. To this kid, making it with such severity. I mean, he was severely mentally, he was not even a 6-month-old in his mind. And physically, he couldn't walk, he couldn't talk, he couldn't eat, but like he was physically dependent. Thankfully, the good part, okay, good and bad, but the good part of Cornelia de Lange keeps the children small. So
Yeah.
he was not grown, like even though he was like 24, he's not like my 24-year-old son. He's like not even half. And he was very light. I could pick him up. I could do whatever. I could transport him. It was amazing. Thankfully, I mean, it's terrible to say, but thankfully he was small, so I could transport him. I could hold him. I could do whatever I wanted with him. And sometimes he fought me. He didn't. He hated cuddling. He hated cuddling. I had to like wrap him and put him in a thing and so I can cuddle and hold him. But he hated it. So he liked to be on his back, and he'd scoot and roll on the carpet and scoot sideways, and that's how we got along on the carpet. And or he loved his walker. He loved using. He can use his feet. He can use a walker and bunk into all the walls. I don't care. But yeah, you know what? He chose. It was his time. You know what? That's why I look back on, and for me to fight to keep him here, I don't think I would have won. I don't think I would have won that battle. I think it was time. After I saw that, and the next day I understood. Okay, that it was time. It was shutting down. Things were saying, okay, I'm done. So it's like,
How did Dimitri's siblings take the passing?
you know what? Pretty good, pretty good. Like I say, my daughter is very matter of fact. Actually, she wants to get into medicine. She's looking for medical school right now. So she's more of a, you do what you have to do. She's a little bit like me that way. And she goes in and she says, Mom, I think something's wrong with Dimitre. Wow. She knew. She didn't want to startle me. So I think she knew. So they were there. The kids were there. My husband has always been kind of like disconnected. He hasn't been overly like emotionally connected. He's been always, because ever since we got the diagnosis, and when we got the diagnosis, we were told he might not make it. I remember I was in the bed. He was in that lounge sitting chair thing.
Yeah.
And he like passed out. Like he like closed his eyes and he passed out. And in the morning he had all these welts on his body, like all these big red welts. And he doesn't take emotional stress well. Like he shuts down. He just shuts down. So he was always expecting Dimitre to pass away, and so his care and he says, you do whatever you have to do. I'll work on whatever. And you don't have to. He says, because I think he's like some men need to disconnect, and he couldn't cope. He couldn't. That was his way of coping. He doesn't cope. He didn't connect. He will do the things I ask him to do, but to have like a connection with Dimitre or be fully invested, I think his fear of always thinking Dimitri's going to pass away, or would have. Here, would sometimes my mom, please don't blame, if when I asked them to just watch Dimitri for just a little bit, they were happy to do so. But I said, don't ever think, don't ever worry that if he passes away with you, that I would ever blame you. Because I think that's what happens when you have children with Cornelia de Lange, or especially, or something medically delicate. You don't have sometimes a lot of community support, only because people are afraid to take on that responsibility. We're talking even your parents, even your siblings, even friends, like family. They're afraid to take that on because they're thinking, geez, like my mom, I never thought that would come. What if something, please don't blame me if something happened. I said, I would never do that.
Yeah.
But that's what they're thinking. That's what people think. If something happens and your child is in their hands, are you going to blame me for the rest of your life? So they're afraid too.
So can I ask you more about how you created a community, or did you already are you originally your family from Winnipeg?
No, there's no community. I have nothing. I actually don't have anything. My parents came from Europe and they came here. I have no aunts, uncles, grandparents. I have nothing. They're all in Europe. But the community I have, it's just my family, my parents, my brother, and my husband now, and my children. So that's my community. And
Yeah.
of course, people who I connect with through my channels and through, the product, and from sharing my story. And those are my people. That's that's how I connect. But an outside community, don't have one.
And how did you manage? So it sounds like did you have two children after Dimitri?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I had two children. Okay, and here it is. Dimitri was born 1997. My daughter was born 1998, like the year after. So here I was because I was also older, and I thought, okay, I pushed back my career. Like I made a career. I'm a businesswoman. I did whatever, and that took precedent over finding a mate or having a family.
Yeah.
So now I'm running on borrowed time. And even the doctor was saying, I'm amazing your eggs is still okay. And they said, okay, listen, even if you're older, the Cornelia has nothing to do with age. So you're okay with that. Right. So I'm blaming myself. Is it because I was that age? No. So guess what? So I got pregnant the year after, and with Paris, amazing, beautiful, gorgeous, smart. And then my son was a surprise 4 years after that. So I was 35. No, 45.
Yeah, 45. Yeah.
45. I was 45 years old. He was a complete surprise that I got pregnant again. The kids are amazing and beautiful and smart. And one, like I say, now she's my daughter. She's looking to get into a medical school. My son's in corporate finance. I mean, like he's being interviewed by all the top dogs for his. Like, I'm so proud of my kids, and I'm proud of Dimitri. Dimitri is my greatest achievement. He's like the legacy, because I think he helped me make a product that all helps so many other children. And I'll tell you something else, that the Baby Butts cream has helped so many people with so many skin conditions that adults were using it. Adults were using it for things like hemorrhoids, shingles, cold sores. They were telling me all the stuff they're using it for. I side branded it and I called the product Supraderm. Okay. So I called it Supraderm, and I'm because adults are not going to go in a baby aisle buy Baby Butts. Yeah. So I've got athletes. What's those bars called? The girls, they put it on the palms of their hands, and they do on their bars.
Oh yeah.
And hockey players, they say they put it on their heels, because to alleviate any kind of blisters or whatever from the skates. So they're using it for so many other things. So I had to think of something else. Okay, instead of Baby Butts, okay, Supraderm, okay, Supraderm, okay. So there you go. So I made I side branded it for adults. But here's another thing. So a couple of years after that, I've got all these women talking about the Baby Butts cream, and they're coming into my store, like, because I still have the hairdo zoo. I'm still doing like the children's hair salon, whatever. And one woman, there back a couple of years back, there was all this huge scare of all these chemicals in sunscreens. I mean, you can't find a sunscreen without horrific chemicals.
Mhm.
And with fragile skin, and remember Dimitri, he he had horrific, I couldn't take him out in the sun. So I'm thinking, if I had a sunscreen but all the ones had chemicals, and those are horrific. You don't put it on sensitive skin children, never mind medically fragile people, whether it's babies, kids, whatever. Or what if you have cancer? You don't want to put more chemical crap on you. So I called Elaine, my previous chemist that made Baby Butts cream with me. I says, Elaine, do you think we can make a sunscreen? She says, yeah, sure we can. So he says, what do you need it? So I researched, I took pieces of, I didn't reinvent the wheel. I went and I researched all my competitors, anybody who had like what I thought was a good product, and just remove some of the chemicals and say, can we replace this? It took us a while. Like, it took almost 2 years to come up with this product. So I got now a sunscreen, 100% natural. That is, yeah, and I put a patent on it. I got a patent, Canadian patent, and a U.S. patent, and a European patent, because it's 10 simple ingredients, 10 natural ingredients, and it has. What I did is I brought it back, though. I pulled it back because the FDA was checking everybody, and even though mine was okay, I wanted to go a higher SPF. So I brought it back in, and I said, let's add some titanium, still natural, but titanium dioxide actually kicks up the SPF in sunscreens. But so I want to most of my products are zinc oxide. So this titanium dioxide is just a little bit smaller, but I use a non-nano, which means larger molecules, meaning it's safer for the seas, oceans, and people. So I had to bring it back in because I wanted to bump up, add titanium dioxide, bump it up to the SPF. But of course, every change you make, everything you make, has to go back and get retested.
Yeah.
So now we're actually, we have the formulation and it's being retested. So as soon as I get the SPF set, then we're going to start marketing it again. So I've got all these formulations, and it's all happened is because Dimitri kicked it off. So like I said, I'm a hairstylist. I cut hair for a living, and then I opened up an adult salon, and from there I opened up kids salons, and then I met Dimitri's father and had Dimitri, and then I put my salons on pause, on hold, my franchise plans, because I was taking care of Dimitri. But out of that, I made a product for him that is now everywhere. So, and then now I'm scaling it up, and I'm doing other products, other natural stuff, and I'm helping families, I'm helping kids. And it's Dimitri's legacy. So as far as I'm concerned, it's all good. Even though people think that you're stuck. Well, guess what? You know, life is funny that way. It'll start taking you in places you never even thought. As much as what I thought, this is where I'm going, I was always someone who planned, set a course, this is what's going to happen, this, next. All the best laid plans, honestly, it gives you an idea of what you think you might want, but guess what? It'll take you places where you should be. And you know what? Yeah. No regrets at all. And people always think, and I never, okay, I don't know about some families, but when Dimitre was born, the first few years of his life, and as he was getting older, I was very private. I did not want to share my story. I did not want to talk about it. I didn't want to talk about Dimitre, because you know what? I just heard enough. Oh, poor girl. Oh, you poor woman. Mm-hmm. Don't give me your freaking pity party. I don't feel pity for myself. Don't you and other people were pitying me, feeling sorry for me.
Yeah.
Because I had a child with special needs. Are you freaking kidding me? You know how amazing I am? I have salons. I have businesses. I have, you know what? I have people, great support, like people around. Like I have This kid is my ace in the hole. You know what? I'm here. I'm only great because of him. So when people start thinking, oh, you never know where this is going to take you.
Yeah.
Whether it's how it's connected to somebody, how it's connected to an organization, how it's connected to a foundation, how it's connected to, you never know.
Yeah.
And you just got to do your thing. Keep that kid happy, keep the kid alive, do your thing, and don't worry about it. Everything else will come.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good message if I think of some current sort of newly diagnosed with babes who have their plans, they've just gotten married, they're looking at, balancing the basics of being a mom and a wife and a husband
Would you
and
imagine I was
parents.
40 years old looking forward to start a family? I was 40.
Yeah,
I was
yeah,
just newly married. So bing, bing, bing. And I was planning, I wanted a normal child. Bing, bing, bing. Didn't happen. Dimitri was my normal child. So
yeah,
you know what? So take, if anybody was expecting or expected high hopes or expected, it's me. So
yeah,
just whatever. Like I was like, okay, well, that didn't go to plan.
yeah.
So what do you do now?
Well, yeah, and it's the being able to embrace uncertainty. That's a lesson I know for sure. I've learned from this whole thing is
That you see mothers and women comparing all the time. But
yeah,
you know what? Everyone has their own cross to bear. And
yeah,
what was it? With I was a story where there was one man was complaining about all his struggles and he says, "Well, take your cross and throw it in that pile over there." There's a pile of crosses, and it says, and then after you think about it, go in there and find the one that's good enough for you. And they
yeah,
pull out his same cross. It was
exactly.
the smallest one in the bunch. So you know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's like that what you think is so big for you, it's
yeah,
not.
yeah,
You got it. My parents were always there if I needed them. Like if I had to go to the hospital or if there was other things happening. Oh, I remember. Oh, it was shortly after. Yeah, before Paris was born, I got pregnant again, and I had a miscarriage, and it was in the late, like it was like late stage, and I was like, I had blood clots, clot pneumotomy. So we had to drop Dimitri off at my mom's house, and my husband took me to emergency. And I remember it was just like the clots were just. I'd be walking to the bathroom and it'd be clot pneumotomy. It was so bad, and I had to have a DNC because I had a horrific miscarriage. The most painful thing I've ever felt. It was worse than any kind of child, mind you. Okay, addendum, I never had a normal child birth because after Dimitri was born and they did that long cut,
yeah,
I couldn't do vaginally anymore for the
yeah,
next two children after that. So they were all taken out by section, not even the circle. They just went beside the line. So I now have a really nice, long, thick scar from my navel all the way down. It's I was the worst scars from there. But you know what? That's fine. How they get here,
yeah,
who cares how
yeah,
they get
yeah,
here?
yeah.
You know what? And but it was
Dimitri was always at home and you had a care provider that helped at home, or how did you guys?
yeah. I couldn't do it any other way. So um there was no place that he could. When he was old enough, he was enrolled in school. So
Yeah,
he went to school up to they took him up to 21, and then there was a program for older kids or older people or adults from 21 on. There was a program, and I got him into that. After he transitioned out of the school, they couldn't keep him any longer, and then I had to transition him out. But I always, from day one, had not from day one, when my other kids were born. When Paris came the next year, and then Riker came shortly after that. When Paris was born, I knew I needed assistance because I was trying to do some office work. I still wanted to maintain my businesses, and I had Paris and I had Dimitri. So I employed what back then they had. What was that? You can sponsor people from Asian countries, the Philippines, whatever. You can sponsor them, and they would come live with you for 2 years, and you feed them, you give them a room,
yeah,
whatever. And in return, they work like half a day or a day or whatever. And so you sponsor them for 2 years. So this way once they get here for 2 years, then I went through four of those.
Yeah.
Well, and they're all here, and some of them still connect with me, and because what they do is they come here, and then after 2 years, then they can actually put papers in to have their family members come over.
Yeah, right.
And then they have lifestyles here. So I have families here in Canada that are grateful to me that I was able to sponsor them.
Yeah.
And it costs me the flight of a ticket to bring them over, and the agency fees, whatever. So I got to pick on who I decided I want. I said, I've got a special needs child. This is what I need. Who are you? Are you physically capable to do that? And do you want to do something like that?
Mm-hmm.
And so I was able to interview those women to help me.
That's great.
So I would encourage, and because we were able to do that, I would encourage every woman that has special needs, whether it's Cornelia or access whatever government opportunities they have financially, the opportunities, the communities, everything that they have access, because what they're doing, you're left in limbo if you don't know, and you're dangling by a string, and you start feeling overwhelmed. Sometimes these places can help you. They can, I don't know if it's financially or emotionally, or they can guide you in certain areas, but all they need is connection. They need to be connected, because once you go inside your bubble, it's just you and your child, and then you'll start struggling. Something happens, you're going to struggle. You need to reach out. And I know for some women it might be difficult, but you know what? Reach out. Whether you've got a partner or not, reach out. Protect yourself. Make sure you've got some finances, and you put in, and there's always something on the side for you. Women should always have their own bank account. I don't care what anybody says. And I tell my daughter, you always have your own bank account. Your name on it. That's it. You contribute to it. Whatever you got, put it there. Don't let anyone access it. It's your bank. It's a security, a protection thing. It's like, never mind to take care of yourself if something happens. But if you have a child that's dependent on you, a lot of times, it's sad to say, the men don't take over. The men do not take over special needs kids. They don't.
You already had sort of business experience, obviously, with your hair salon. So you did you come with a business background when you opened the hair salons?
No. I have a grade 12 education. I'm a hairdresser. I started as a cutting hair for a couple of years, and then I'll tell you why. But there's always a reason for something. There's always reasons for stuff. So I started, I graduated grade 12. What am I going to do? I don't know. Guess what? I loved cars. I used to race cars. Yeah, I used to race cars. So the thing is that, so when I was like, I was always around guys, and my brother was mechanic. Like, I was always around people that had souped up cars, working on them, doing all kinds of things. And then there was a crowd they're working on a car, and the mechanics would say, I'm not going to take it on. I says, I wouldn't mind taking it on. I'd like to. And they say, really? I said, yeah. So that didn't come to fruition. But when I was 18, I was able to take a car, and they souped it up for me, and I took it down the strip, and I did some racing. I loved it. So off and on for 10 years, I was racing. So, but that's just part of my personality. I'm a speed junkie. Like, I like things that go fast. Anyways, so when I was 18, I thought, okay, I'm graduated. I need something. So I tried to get into a mechanics course. They wouldn't let me because I was a woman. And they said, oh, we don't, you work with your hands with mechanics. Why don't you try hairdressing? So I took the hairdressing. I'm like, oh, I was really good at that. Okay, good enough. So after like a year and a half, 2 years, I got a diploma. Okay, well, I better start making a living. So I got my first job cutting hair, and it was a place called First Class Mail. It was just doing men's hair. And I thought, okay, good. And the pay was really good. And wow, these guys, honestly, had I known what they were up to, what they were doing was they were trying to hire attractive women so they would get these business guys.
Right.
And charge up the yin yang. And get this, I would get 50% of my pay, whatever I brought in. I would get 50%. He had a couple guys working. He was giving them 60%. And I caught him and the owner, and I says, why are you giving Renee 60? I've been here for 2 years. You're paying me 50% and you're giving him 60 and he's just been here 6 months. He says, well, Majda, he's got a family to support. I'm like, but since I complained, they started, my workload was less. They were not giving me the work. They were kind of trying to and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going to leave before you get a chance to like make sure like I quit or you fire me. So, cause they were mad because I brought that up. They were like insulted. How dare I complain? I'm a woman. Here's your 50%, be happy you got that. So what I did is I kept my mouth shut and I worked there for the next, it was 3 years total. So for the following 2 years, I kept my mouth shut. I was quiet as a mouse. I was building up my customers, building, taking their names, taking their phone numbers. So after 2 years, I was loaded. So I was like, okay, I had a customer who had a strip mall and I said, I'm looking for a spot. He says, I've got a spot in the Osborne Village. He says, I will rent to you. It's good enough. So I got all my customers, called them or whatever. And I just said to Frank, see you later. I'm leaving. And I moved, I'd say the majority of my customers went. And so these are all adult men. And then, of course, they started bringing their wives and they started bringing their children. So I started building. I was in that for 10 years. For 10 years in the Osborne Village. And I was banging it. Like I was doing good business. I was charging a lot, even back then. Oh God, I think I was charging back then. I won't tell you how long ago. Oh yeah, it was a long time ago. Anyways, 20, 30 years ago, like I was charging $30 for a men's haircut. And they didn't even bat an eye because it was business people. It was like business, because he catered to more high-end business people, lawyers, like high-end. And so I had all these customers. So what was happening was I started getting their wives and they started getting their kids. And then I started losing my male customers. The men started leaving. And that's because of the women, like not so much the women, the kids. So I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? It's killing my business. I'm going down the tubes. I'm losing my customers. So I decided, I'll open up a place just for kids. So I researched that. I put fun chairs in. I put animal chairs in. I put cartoons. I put all kinds of stuff. I said, okay, here, bring your kids there. And it got so busy that I opened a second one. And I was like, okay, maybe I'll start. And so I had to close my adult salon because I was so busy with this other stuff. So I opened up the other one. I was going to franchise across Canada. So I was the first salon that catered just to kids with a specialty design. So there, after my second one, I was approached to be franchised. And then that is when I met my husband. That is when I got pregnant with Dimitre, and my whole story started a different path. So everything that I was going for this way, that's what I'm telling everybody. You think your life plan is going this way, it went this way. So no, it's like I say, I opened my second store. I was going to franchise. And that's when I met my husband. That's when I got pregnant with Dimitre. And of course, I just thought, okay, you know what my thought was? Oh, I'm still going to cut hair. I'm going to put my child in the carrier for now, the baby, and I can still cut hair and I can still wrong. Anyways, I was able, I had wonderful staff, wonderful people, wonderful men. So I still had my salons. I was able to stay home first because I was in and out of the hospital the first 3 years with Dimitre. Thankfully, my salons were still going. The customers were still, like, people were still there. Like it was, I'm so grateful that nothing changed. So nothing changed, but the only thing that did change was because for the stores, I was looking to make shampoos and conditioners, and the chemist helped me I told her, stop that. She helped me make the cream for my son. And we're just continuing with that. So it's a whole new door that that's what I'm saying. Don't get stuck. Don't think that, I'm stuck in this situation forever. No, things will happen. Things will change. And it's going to change, even if you don't think about it, even if you don't want it. It doesn't matter. It will change, and it will always be for the better. You won't know, until you're actually in it.
Yeah.
And they say, oh,
Later.
that had to happen because that happened. Oh,
Exactly.
that had to happen because that happened. So
Yeah.
it will always,
Yeah, there's
there's nothing. Things
Sure.
always, and you're right, things always happen for a reason, and it will happen. So
Yeah.
it's like, it's your, the only thing that needs to change is people's attitudes toward it.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah.
things will happen, and they will always. It's how you
Mm-hmm.
take that situation. You've got
Yeah.
to take it as a positivity. Okay, this take me down there. It's not where I wanted to go. It's not where I thought I'd go. But you know what? Let's see where it takes me. It's got to. I bet you it takes me somewhere better.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that is part of our story. I think that's all in a nutshell, basically.
And think of how much your life has, shifted along the way.
Oh yeah,
And then now, his legacy continues, even though
yeah.
he's passed, and I'm sure you guys miss him dearly.
Every day.
It's so difficult to say because everybody deals with sort of the loss of their child in a different way, and it's such a unless you're there, there's nothing you can relate to that. Is there anything you'd say to moms who've lost their child with CdLS?
You know what? It's really everyone. Like you're right. Everyone processes grief differently and at their own time. I processed what I thought I processed my grief when Dimitri passed away, but it was expected, but yet unexpected. You know what? He was, and I kind of in the back of my mind knew it was happening. It wasn't like a sudden death, so I'm sure I would have reacted differently if he was fine one day and gone the next. And I'm sure it's a different process when you know something's happening and you're kind of expecting it and you're preparing yourself mentally. So it depends. I think your grief process will depend on those situations of how the death occurred. But I find for myself, I find it really odd, and I was going to talk to you about that today. I find it really odd. Whereas I didn't break down, didn't sob, didn't cry. I mean, I was crying. I was upset for a while, a good week, if not like. But to myself, it was not. Everyone knew everyone was upset or whatever. So I was kind of expecting. I kind of knew in the back of my mind. So, but when the impact happened, now in the last few months, it's like I see a picture, I see something on the internet, I see something on Facebook, I see something, and boom, I'm just like, oh, I can't. I start crying. I go away.
Yeah.
I think about him all the time. So I'm processing it now. And it's
Yeah.
3 years later. Like I'm dealing with it now. So
Yeah.
I think I got to get over, like when I see his picture, when whatever, before it was like, okay, I got sad, whatever, but it's really weird. So when people tell you this is what's going to happen, no, it's not. Timeline, like mine is 3 years after his passing, and I'm getting hit. I keep a sock in my purse. Like, it was for comfort for now. But I mean, just it's hitting me. This is the first time I'm able to think about things without completely. So I think, kept it at bay so it wouldn't affect me so much, like emotionally or whatever, right? Like it's because it's tough because he was such a big part and he made such a big impact, but not only in my life. And I'm thinking, okay, you know what? Things happen for a reason. He left his legacy. That's his legacy. And that's what I'm proud of. I'm proud he was born. I was proud of, you know what? I'm proud he was born to me.
Yeah.
So when I see people and they look or another child and other people going, oh, that poor woman, I sometimes have to hold my tongue saying like, are you kidding me? That's the best thing that probably could happen to that woman. You know what? And her family. I mean, you learn so much from that child, no matter how long they live. It could be a day, it could be years, it could be 20, whatever. No matter how long they live, there's something you're going to take away from that. You're connected. I mean, and it also, I think it really depends on what you believe. Like, it actually shaped me, and And I think I was instrumental in making something that would help other children and other people. So that's what my pride is in. It says,
Mhm.
you use me and you help me make this so I can help others in your
Yeah.
name, in your memory, in your legacy. So you know what? That how amazing is that? How many people get that opportunity? I'm
Yeah.
thinking, you know what? I'm just proud. Like and like I say, it also it really, I believe, after he's waiting. Like I believe we're all interconnected.
Yeah.
I do believe we're all interconnected. And when it's my time, we'll be connected again. So there's no loss. So when you're thinking of loss, I don't think it's loss. I think it's just a waiting game. You completely shut down, close off, put yourself in a hole, or you deal with it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how you deal with it is totally in your control. I mean, yeah, you feel sad, you feel you if you need to scream, cry, what you do it. Like you take care of your grief, you get it out. You need to talk to people or whatever. You do whatever it takes to handle your grief. So
Yeah.
really, you have two options: either you deal with your grief or you shut yourself in a hole. And
Mhm.
shutting yourself off and trying to close, like, I get it, and sometimes you want to block everything off, like it's, you don't want to think it's happening or it's happening, especially if your child is going spiraling down. And you know what, there it's reality based, but you don't want to live in reality sometimes, because you got a child who's exceptional and you want them, so you if you battled for them to live, you're going to keep battling for them,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But there will be a time where you see the struggle in them and they want to say goodbye.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
Or,
Yeah. Anyway, I love the fact that you're sharing Dimitri's story along as your company grows and keeping his memory alive through there. It's wonderful to see and keep his memory alive. It's
well, the
wonderful.
company wouldn't be there if it wasn't for him and
Yeah.
the product he inspired. So I mean, I don't think I would have been this I wouldn't have gone through that door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your time.
You're very welcome. Really
Yeah.
enjoyed it. It was
Yeah.
nice
And
seeing you.
so I mean part of this is like trying to connect people and now obviously people are gonna know
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So, and I think people are gonna, people really appreciate people sharing their stories because oftentimes, as you know, you're alone somewhere. And then, and again, it's just one format for people to get to know each other. I think Facebook groups have probably been the the largest sort of support for families, but not everybody's on Facebook. So I mean, a lot of people are have left it, as well as the younger generation is not on Facebook, in terms of they're either on Instagram or they've just boycotted social media altogether. And
Well,
so
you
there's a
know who's
huge
forced me to
rejection.
come out is my daughter. My daughter is the one who filmed, and no, we're putting it up there. We're putting it because I am more private. I always feel I don't want to burden other people. I don't want a pity party. I don't want people feeling sorry for me. I don't So that's why I'm private and quiet. I've never shared Dimitri and his story. I never did. So you'll never see from me starting when he was small.
Yeah,
I'm doing it now only because my daughter forced me in the last few years,
yeah,
because she's putting me on, like, she's filming me. Here, put your makeup on. We're doing another pot. We're doing this. We're doing, like, so all
yeah.
those things you see on social media, that's not me. My daughter puts it up
But
on
I
that.
think that's great. I think it's so lovely to see. I loved seeing because I've seen photos of Dimitri, but I haven't seen an actual video. So it was lovely to see Dimitri moving around on the carpet as you were sharing that story and actually see.
That's my daughter. She put
Yeah,
all that stuff together,
yeah,
and she says, "You got to put it up there. You got to put it up there,"
yeah,
because number one, I'm not so tech savvy,
yeah.
but she's put it all together, and she says, "No, no, we're putting it up there." So she's the one who put all the stuff for the.
It's
Uh,
probably nice for her to also share her brother, and
she
keep
loves.
that
You know
memory
what?
alive.
She loves her, but she loved her brother. They were connected.
Yeah,
It's strange, even though he didn't. She was connected to him, and I think he connected to her as much as he could, because
yeah,
he was, like I say, he was not he didn't want to be held or whatever. But I think they shared a special connection. Come here, Paris. Oh, Paris just checking on me. This is my daughter. Come here. Come here. I want you to see my daughter. Paris, this is the one that gets me in the trouble, that puts all this stuff on the social media and stuff. And this is my daughter, Paris.
Hi, Paris. I'm Yenny.
This is Jenny. Yenny.
Yeah, thanks for doing all the videos of your brother and getting your mom to share her story broadly. That's wonderful.
Yeah, she's the troublemaker. See, she's the one who got my face and all my stuff out there.
Well, I always say I have a son who's so Emmy, my daughter's Emmy, who has CdLS, and she's 17, and I have a son who's 21. I always say that you got to have, especially in the middle age group, you got to have a mentor in their 20s, not a mentee, a mentor.
Yes,
because otherwise we're out of touch.
Oh yeah.
So my school, Paris, and I hear you're planning on going to medical school.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
I'm working on.
You have an experience also with your brother in terms that I think that brings a whole level of skill and empathy and that art of medicine that often, unless
that might have triggered it when she was performing secret. That might have triggered it.
Yeah.
He's definitely one of the reasons why I'm very interested in medical school and wanting to help obviously everyone, and especially children and children with special needs. So Dimitri's definitely been a huge impact on that decision. So
yeah. But I want to say thank you, Paris, and thanks, Micah, for all the time that you've given to share your story and Dimitri's story.
Very welcome. We're proud to share.
Yeah.
Proud to share.